putting in work. Work, yeah. Putting in work. I thank God for the favor when the money come. Half for the time, tax fees, insufficient funds. What I gotta do to get ahead? I'm on to something. What I gotta do to get a raise? They all be one putting in work.
Welcome to the Modest Sports Show, home of your college athlete, where we are player-led and player-focused. I'm Corey, and tonight we are back with another amazing installment of the Modest Sports Show. We got a lot to get into this evening. This past weekend was a very big weekend in college football. We've seen a lot of good games. Tonight, just to be more specific, we'll be covering Ohio State versus Nebraska, as well as Alabama versus Missouri. Lastly, Texas A&M and LSU. Now, it was in my intentions to cover Oregon and Illinois. That game quite didn't go as I expected. Was right with my pick and prediction in that game as far as the winner, but did not quite get the score right. Thought it was going to be a little bit more of a competitive matchup between those two. But Oregon definitely came to play ball. They definitely showed why they just might be my national championship favorite. So with that being said, let's first dive right into this Ohio State and Nebraska game. To note, Nebraska, they didn't start that game too hot. From the very first kickoff, Nebraska, they fielded the ball horribly and started, I believe, inside the 10-yard line. So the first drive really wasn't much of anything. Now, I kind of saw that and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking Nebraska isn't going to really stand the test of time, especially being on the road against Ohio State. But they proved me wrong. Just going based off my notes, Ohio State's offense really struggled throughout the course of that game, just finding its groove, finding its niche. And I believe Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson, the game callers, they did a good job at identifying that it's not for a lack of talent that Ohio State hasn't been able to find, or in that game at least, really found what it wanted to do. It could be just a tale of having too many options, right? Like a kid in the candy store doesn't know what it wants. Do I want this? Do I want that? It's so much candy. So they really couldn't get into the flow of the offense, right? A majority of their production offensively in that game came off of shots. If we look specifically, Cardinal Tate had 4 receptions for 102 yards and 1 touchdown. And Will Howard, put the ball in the air. Jeremiah Smith had 3 receptions for 70 yards, I believe, in a touchdown. So a majority of their points came off shots, right? I think it's worth noting that Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson only combined for 54 total yards rushing. So that's credit to Nebraska's defense. I think they did a very good job getting off the field and not allowing Ohio State's offense to get going. I think they did a good job, and they showed it early in the game. Early in that game, they had a 4th down stop, actually, right after they punted the ball, I believe. Yeah, right after they punted the ball, they had a big 4th down stop in positive territory. Ohio State drove a good distance of the field. Nebraska kind of set the tone early in the game with that 4th down stop. I think Ohio State, on the other hand, kind of thought like, okay, we're at home, we got the momentum, we're in positive territory, we're gonna go out and we're gonna set the tone. But Nebraska, they did a good job responding and not allowing that game to get away from them. And then I think as we see over the course of that game, I think the two key stats that really stuck out to me were the rushing yards as well as time of possession by Nebraska. Nebraska, they had 121 yards rushing. So they finished with more rushing yards than Ohio State. And typically when you have when you control the ground game, normally you control the pace of the game as well as the time of possession. And so they had more time of possession than Ohio State, finishing with 35 minutes and 7 seconds. So, I mean, all in all, these were my two key takeaways from Nebraska and then from Ohio State, respectively. Nebraska, I believe they have a good team. I believe Dylan Raiola showed a lot of promise to be a freshman, to go into that environment and prevail. He didn't play too bad. I believe only threw one interception, and that was towards the end of the game. But for the most part, he played a pretty good game, and he gave his team a chance, especially being 19 years old. That's really all you can ask for or ask of from a quarterback that young, being in such a moment so big. So I think Dylan Raiola did a good job. I think Nebraska has a lot of promise going forward. You know, if we look at where they were last season relatively to where we are right now in this year, as far as games played, I think they're doing a much better job. And Matt Rule is also showing that he's kind of building that program from the ground up. I think they have, I won't say two of the best, but they have two very stout interior defensive linemen who are definitely, I'm not quite sure where they are as far as grade level, but they definitely give that defense an anchor, and they allow that defense to kind of to play around them and play off of them. All right, so moving on. That's just kind of, real quick before we move on. This is what I noted for Ohio State going forward, right? Now, it's a tale of two causes because, like I said, they have so many options that it seemed like it kind of just, it's like, how can we do this? Which way can we go? And in that, there's some indecision. And in that indecision, there's a lack of productivity. So I feel like Ohio State going forward, they have to, they kind of got to know, like, okay, what, like for instance, they took shots in that game, and they were successful on the majority of the downfield plays. So if I'm Chip Kelly, or if I'm Ryan Day, or anybody who has some say in the way things go, I'm like, okay, let's take more shots. Like let's air the ball out today. It's looking like that's gonna be the day. Forget all this time possession. Let's scheme up some things, and let's get our receivers out there, and let's get them the ball. Let's get them more touches and make some plays. And so and not try to force something that isn't working. And I think for them, that was the run game, be it getting the ball to Judkins or Henderson at times. Will Howard tried to run, or he ran a few times, and they were pretty positive plays, but I still feel like they got a majority of their success in the air. I believe they had 221 passing yards, if I'm not mistaken. So I just think they got to do a better job at kind of knowing the situation and filling it out and going with that. But as far as what it looks like for them in the rest of conference play, they can't afford to play a game like they played against Nebraska, like next week against Penn State, or when they run into Indiana in a few weeks, or just at any point in the season where they're going to be playing a more worthy opponent, an opponent who's going to score the ball. So they definitely got to clean some things up after this past week. I won't necessarily say what I expect of Ohio State because, you know, to be frank, I still have high expectations of them, but, you know, we just got to see how things play out. So that's all I have on that Nebraska and Ohio State game. And so now let's move on to the Alabama and Mizzou game. So in that game, I believe that game was all Alabama. Missouri, unfortunately, I just feel like they had no morale coming into that game. And if I'm being very honest, there were some things I saw in that game they lost against Texas A&M that made me kind of question what they were, because not necessarily from a playmaking standpoint, but just from kind of the momentum and things that I'm saying on the sideline and stuff like that. Some of your leaders pouting and things like that. So that's kind of what I seen in the Texas A&M game. Texas A&M was is a better team, in my opinion, than Alabama this season, which we'll get to after this. But Missouri just didn't really have – it was kind of like – they were kind of like a flat soda to me coming out against Alabama. In part because their starting quarterback was hurt. So Brady Cook obviously had the miraculous comeback last week against Auburn, led his team to a win. But it's Auburn, if I'm being honest. And that's no knock to Auburn and their program, but, it's Auburn. And so coming out in this game, like I said, kind of flat. I think this game was all Alabama. I think Alabama did a good job creating more balance for this team. Not allowing Milroe to drop back 50 times, really setting a precedent for him to be able to use his arm as well as his legs. If we're looking at the stats, got it right here. Milroe threw 16 for 26, 215 yards passing, 11 carries, 50 yards. Haynes, Miller, Young, that three-headed monster. Young, at the end of the game, breaking out a big one. But the three running backs combined for a total of 190 yards. And so DeBoer and company, they did a good job creating balance in the offense. I think this was a very big week for them and their morale, right? They also created 3 takeaways and interceptions. All in all, for Alabama, this was a win that they needed. I genuinely think this is a win that they needed. I've been hearing mixed opinions and mixed emotions about, okay, is Alabama, do they still have a chance? Are they out, after suffering the loss to Vandy and Tennessee, or kind of, what their future holds. But regardless of that, I think Alabama did a good job coming out, playing good ball, a lot of momentum in that game. Now, still some things that they got to clean up on. They lost the penalty margin again in this game. I didn't note it, but either which way, a couple things they need to work on. But the defense, I think I heard the sentiment that Kane Womack did not want a single point to be scored in that game. And as you can see, even on the last drive of the game, fourth and goal stop, that's the Alabama brand of football. That's what Alabama fans are accustomed to seeing and have seen for years. So I think it was good, them getting back to that. And just all in all, I think Missouri wasn't really even a factor in this game. Alabama needed this win. And, it was a fun game to watch. Like I said, 3 takeaways, 2 safety interceptions. I think a linebacker had a pick. So, you can't really ask for a much better performance. Now, they have to continue to build on that. They got some. November is going to be a tricky month for them. But all in all, I'm interested to see how strong they'll finish. Missouri, I think for them, especially given the situation, it pretty much kind of killed their season hopes, right? Because Brady is dealing with their starting quarterback. He's dealing with injury, and I'm sure he's going to be week to week depending on the severity of his injury. But aside from that, like I said, just low morale. I didn't really see any spark in that team. And I had high hopes for Missouri in the preseason, especially where they ended last season. And that's not to say that they still won't finish this last month of football on a high note. It's just I don't quite see them getting back to where they need to be without their leader on board and their starting quarterback. Because their offense is really predicated on the throws that he can make to be able to get to guys like Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Mookie, guys like that. So, I think their season is a question mark, but hopefully they're able to turn things around and kind of get the shit back on course prior to the end of the year. And then lastly, this was probably the biggest game of the weekend in Texas A&M and LSU. For starters, I guess let me say LSU was I think LSU had been kind of competing sneakily. Like they were quiet. Like after the USC loss, there's a couple teams in college football who are just kind of quiet behind the scenes, right? I would take it LSU. I would take it Clemson, Notre Dame, Iowa State. It's just a few teams who are like week to week just kind of getting wins, staying out the way. Getting wins, staying out the way. I think LSU was one of those teams. And Texas A&M, on the other hand, I won't necessarily say they were quiet with it because they had a big win over Missouri about 2-3 weeks ago. And for Texas A&M, it just, aside from last weekend when they were in Starkville, I think Texas A&M have looked pretty good. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I think I'm a pretty decent assessor when it comes to talent and when it comes to just foreshadowing. And I'm not saying this, like I said, I'm not saying this to be cocky or arrogant. I'm just going based off the stats. This weekend we went 3-0, right? We got the Oregon pick right, we got the Alabama pick right, and we got the Texas A&M pick right. So just saying. But aside from that, man, my prediction for this game, it was closer than what it finished out to be. I thought LSU would do what they did, which was play fast, but they fizzed out in the second half. Or more importantly, they fizzed out what I feel like is in the end of the first half by missing a field goal, right? And so, just looking at some notes, said LSU started fast. Nuts got in the groove early. But I will say the special teams killed LSU's drive. Over the entirety of the game, they left 9 points off the board with blatant miscues in its operations. But earlier in the game, in the first half, I think LSU's defense did a good job at giving Connor Wigman some exotic looks. And if we were to foreshadow, Wigman left the game because he could not get in the groove. Wigman really didn't give Texas A&M a chance to win the game, right? But up until the second half, I think big credit to Mike Elko and his staff for making a decision to make a quarterback change and get Marcel Reed in the game, because when he got in the game, it was like Texas A&M took on a new life. His first touch was a touchdown, first play, and so that kind of set the tone for what the rest of the game would be. I think if I got here, it says Marcel Reed finished the game with 132 total yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that in itself, to come in the second half and finish the game with more total yards offense than the starting quarterback should let you know he was on a mission, should let you know that Texas A&M kind of felt they felt a shift in the atmosphere when he came into the game. And, I mean, it just seemed like as that game went on, Texas A&M got stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And not just on the offensive side, right? Defensively as well. Greg Nussmeier threw 3 interceptions. 2 by the same person. 2 were caught by the same person. And then one was a screen he tried to throw. I don't think he saw the defender and, was able to pick him off. But I just think, man, LSU, it sucks for them because, like I said, even though Texas A&M was my pick, I found myself like second quarter of the game, end of the first quarter, like really starting to pull for LSU and want them to get the win on the road. I love watching exciting offenses. I think, for the day and the age that we're in college football, there's really no reason to not be taking shots, to not have an electric offense. I get we're grounded on principles and all these good things guys, play football. Go out and have fun. And I think that's what that's what makes Oregon so fun to watch. That's what makes LSU so fun to watch. At times, Texas, they have these offenses that go, right? I never understood it in football where a 2-minute offense looks better than the offense that you have for the first 58 minutes of the game. Like, why are we waiting for the 2-minute drill to look our best when now our backs are against the wall? How about or Ole Miss? Forgot to throw Ole Miss in there. Ole Miss as well. Throw the ball. Throw the damn ball. Throw the ball. No one, I'm sorry, I posted this on Twitter the other day. No one cares to see inside zone first down. Pin and pull second down. Third down, obvious passing situation, throw the ball. You have nothing to lose. Or you do for the better teams. But like I was watching Duke and Florida State the other night. Florida State has nothing to lose. At the time, I think they were 1-5, 1-6. Throw the ball, man. Why are we like, come on, throw the ball. So I love and while I'm on the topic, I love that's exactly why I have Oregon probably winning this thing. I think Oregon is my team. And they were last year, but the way they look this year, I don't think there's a defense in college football that can stop them. But they look that legit. They look that good. And, but anywho, LSU go on the road. They face a very tough Texas A&M team. And that's a good way to note it also. Texas A&M, from the very beginning of the season, when I saw the way they played Notre Dame, and when I saw what their defense was capable of in that game, I said Texas A&M actually might have a chance this year. I'm not saying to win a national championship, but playoff contention at this point in the season, most definitely. And so I think the Texas and Texas A&M game, that's going to be something very important to see. And we'll just see how the season goes. We'll see how it ends. But quick addition, guys, tonight, just to kind of get the juices flowing. I'm looking forward to this week also. Ohio State, Penn State. That's going to be a great game. And we got some other games to look out for also. And so while you're here, or before I leave, be sure to like this video, comment. Who do you have? Who's the best team in college football right now? What you think? Drop that in the comments below. Leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And we will see you on the next video. And just like that.